I also hope that you are having an amazing day so far. So today we will be doing our grade 5 English lesson on adverbs that compare. So we'll be doing our grade 5 English lesson on adverbs that compare. And before we start, we're going to log into aplusstudents.ca and we're going to log in with our username as well as our password. Once we've logged in with our username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of language arts. And then grade 5. All right, so once you've selected grade 5, then you're going to scroll down up until you get to the chapter of adverbs that compare. All right. All right, so with adverbs that compare, okay, with our lesson, grade 5 lesson on adverbs that compare, right? Our chapter that we are focusing on today is adverbs that compare. Our subject is English language arts. Grade 5. And the lessons that we are focusing on today is to use adverbs to compare. So that is going to be our chapter, subject, grade, as well as our lesson for today. And we are doing our tutorial lesson on aplusstudents.ca. So if you do want to go back, recap, go over certain lessons or chapters, then you can go to aplusstudents.ca. There we have the chapter, which is adverbs that compare, subject, which is English language arts, grade 5, and the lesson is to use adverbs to compare. All right, so now we're going to officially start with our lesson. So you can use adverbs to compare actions, right? And an adverb, it tells us more about the verb, right? It's almost like describing a verb or it's telling us more about the verb, but that is an adverb. Either tells us more about the verb or describes the verb, right? And when it comes to adverbs and comparing adverbs or comparing actions, then we do have comparative adverbs, right? And we have superlative adverbs. So we have comparative adverbs which compare how two actions are done, and we have superlative adverbs that compare how more than two actions are done. So once again, we said that an adverb, right, it compares actions, right? Because remember, a verb is an action, right? So it compares actions. Then we have a comparative adverb that compares how two actions are done. And then we have a superlative adverb. We have superlative adverbs which compare how more than two actions are done. And for adverbs that have more than one, or let's say just an adverb that has one syllable, right? We add an ER. To make the comparative adverb. So basically with the comparative adverb, we add ER and we add EST to make the superlative adverb. And the superlative adverb, it shows us how more than two actions are done. And for example, here we have one which is soon, sooner, and soonest, right? Which means that our base word, right, is soon. And if we compare, right, two actions or how actions are done, then we can say it is sooner, right? And if we compare how more than two actions are done, then we say soonest. Another example is, for example, it's maybe where we say our base word is fast, right? That is our base word or our base, yeah, our base word. So we can maybe say that something or someone moves fast or fast, right? But maybe John is faster or faster than Aaron, right? Then we can say, but Jake is the fastest. So you are comparing, right? And if you are comparing two actions that is being done, we add er. And if we're adding more than two actions that is being done, and then we add an est. All right. So now if we look at this picture in front of us, right? Here they're giving us two breakdowns or descriptions of one being a comparative adverb and the other being a superlative adverb, right? And remember we said a comparative adverb, it compares two actions that is being done. And a superlative adverb, it compares more than two actions that are being done. So when it comes to a comparative adverb, examples are I plan my attacks more carefully than you, right? Which means that more carefully is our comparative adverb. And in this case, right, we're going to come back to this one also during the course of our lesson because we will find out about adverbs with one syllable and adverbs with more than one syllable. If we have one syllable, we just add our comparative adverb, which is er, and a superlative adverb, which is est. But as soon as the word, for example, like carefully, which has got three syllables, like carefully, right? As soon as it has more than one syllable, right? And then for our comparative adverb, we add more carefully. So we don't say carefully, yeah, or carefullyest. We say more carefully, right? And in this, with the superlative adverb, if it has more than one syllable, right, we say most carefully. We don't say carefullyest, right? But with one syllable, one syllable, sorry, for example, here, we just say fastest for our superlative adverbs, saddest for our superlative adverbs, right? And comparative adverbs, once again, it compares to actions that's being done, and we add an er. And superlative, it compares more than two actions that is being done, and we add est. And when the word has more than one syllable, and then for the comparative adverb, we add more in front of that word. And for the superlative adverb, we add most in front of that specific word. All right, so we're going to come back to this again, especially with the more carefully and most carefully. All right, so now we're going to aplusstudents.ca and we're going into our lesson that is to use adverbs to compare. All right. You can use adverbs to compare actions, right? And that is what we said, right? So we said that we have comparative adverbs and we have superlative adverbs. And we said as a comparative adverb, it compares how two actions are done. And a superlative adverb, it compares how more than two actions are done, right? And we said that when it comes to a comparative adverb, we add er. We add er to our word, right? And with the superlative, we add the est to the end of our word to basically show the actions that is being done. And we add the er as well as the est, you know. So for that adverb that specifically has one syllable. So if it only has one syllable, like fast and soon, right? For example, or yeah, fast or soon, then it means that we add er or est. Er to a comparative adverb and est to a superlative adverb. That is when it has one syllable. And we made an example of soon, sooner, soonest, because soon has got one syllable only. It's like soon, one syllable, right? So if we compare two actions when it comes to soon, then it will be sooner. If we compare more than two actions that are done, we say soonest. So we added er and est. But when an adverb, right? So for an adverb that have more than one syllable, we then have to add more to make it comparative, to make the comparative adverb, and we add most to make the superlative adverb. It's like the example that we made about more carefully and most carefully, because the word carefully has got more than one syllable, carefully. So we say more carefully and we say most carefully when we make comparisons between two actions or how two actions are done, as well as how more than two actions are done. And an example also of words or adverbs that have more than one syllable, we can say safely. So safely has got two syllables. So safely, two syllables, right? So our word safely, is our base word. And if we want to show the comparative form, right? We want to show how two actions are done, then we can say it is more safely because it safely has got two syllables. And if we want to show the how more than two actions are done, and then that is in the superlative form, then we say it is most safely. So we have safely, more safely, and most safely. So we added more and we added most. More to the comparative adverb and most to the superlative adverb when we have more than one syllable. So when the adverb have more than one syllable, we add more to the comparative adverb and most to the superlative adverb. All right, and for the adverb that's early, right? So the adverb early, we would then drop the Y, so early, we would drop the Y, right? And when it comes to a comparative adverb, right, in order for it to make it a comparative adverb to show the two actions that are done, we will then drop the Y and we will say earlier because we will add the IER. And that shows the comparative. This is the comparative adverb. And when it comes to the superlative adverb, right, then it means that we also drop the Y when it comes to early, but then we add IEST. IEST to make it superlative. And this is the superlative adverb. All right. So once again, right, our chapter is on comparing adverbs, right? And when it comes to the use of adverbs to compare, right, then it means that when we use adverbs to compare and then we compare, or let's say we use comparative adverbs to compare two actions that are done, and we use superlative adverbs to compare how more than two actions are done, right? And with the comparative adverb, we add ER, and with the superlative adverb, we add EST. But when our syllable, when our word, sorry, has more than one syllable, and then we say more and the word, we add more to the comparative adverb, and we add most to the superlative adverb. All right. Now it says we need to complete the sentence with the correct form of the verb. Of all his mistakes, the last mistake weighed on Tucker's mind. So, of all his mistakes, the last mistake weighed So basically, we must use, so the word is heavy, right? Because it's like saying the of all his mistake, the last mistake weighed heavy on Tucker's mind. So heavy, right? So heavy is actually the word that we should use. It weighs heavily. Okay, let's heavily because it is the it's an adverb. So heavily on Tucker's mind, right? But now if we look at heavily, right? Heavily has got three syllables. It's got heavily. It's got three syllables, meaning it has got more than one syllable, right? And what do we say if we have more than one syllable? What do we add to the comparative as well as the superlative adverb in order to show the comparative as well as the superlative adverb? Do we just add er? Do we just add est? Do we add ier, iest? Do we add more? Do we add most? All right, so when it comes to heavily, right, with more than one syllable, it means that for our comparative adverb, we're going to add more heavily. And for our superlative adverb, we're going to add most heavily. And that is our base word. So once again, right? So we know now that we're either going to add most or we're going to add more to our word, right? But now we need to see if we are now comparing two actions or more than two actions. So of all his mistakes, the last mistake weighed heavily on Tucker's mind. So basically, when it comes to the sentence, right, we are comparing more than two actions. So we can then say most heavily. So most heavily on his mind. So most heavily. Oopsie. So most heavily. Right? So most heavily is our answer, right? It's our answer, and it's basically a superlative adverb. All right. So we can use adverbs to compare actions, and we see that we use comparative adverbs as well as superlative adverbs to show that there are two actions are done or more than two actions that is being done. So we're going to the next one that says complete the sentence with the correct form of adverb. The pitcher threw the ball on the second pitch than on the first pitch. So the pitcher threw the ball on the second pitch than on the first pitch. So the word that we are going to add there is the picture through the ball low. This is low. So low is our base word. So that's our base word. So we need to see if we are using a comparative adverb or a superlative adverb. Comparative adverb to compare how two actions are done, or superlative adverb basically to compare how more than two actions are done. So the pitcher threw the ball low on the second pitch than on the first pitch. And if we look at that specific sentence, right, it says that the pitcher threw the ball low on the second pitch than the first pitch, which means that this is a comparative adverb, right? Low on the second than the first, right? We're comparing to actions. So if we're comparing to actions, then it means that we our this word over here, it then changes into the pitcher through the ball lower, because with comparative adverb we add an er. Lower on the second pitch than on the first pitch. So the pitcher threw the ball lower on the second pitch than on the first pitch. So lower is our answer over there. Not lowest, because lowest is superlative. Lower. Lowest is the superlative. Lower is the comparative. All right. Mrs. Trans's porch light shines. So basically shines bright of all the lights on her block. So if they're saying of all the lights, then we already know superlative, right? Because she's comparing it to all of the lights on the blocks, right? So if we say that Mrs. Trans's porch light shines bright, right? This is our base. Brighter will be our comparative. And brightest will be our superlative. Will be the superlative. Right? So we need to choose between the comparative or the superlative, right? So here it says Mrs. Trans's porch light shines bright, because we're going to change this now, bright, of all the lights on her block, which means that she is comparing how more than two actions are being done than all of the lights on her block. So which means that we can say if it's all the lights on the block, then it means that this is a superlative adverb. This is a superlative adverb. So if it's a superlative adverb, and then it means that we are choosing brightest. So which means that Mrs. Trans's porch light shines It actually shines the brightest, shines brightest, oh, brightest of all the lights on our blocks. So brightest, and that is also our superlative adverb. It's a superlative adverb, right? Because it shows how more than two actions are done. All right. Now let's go to our test where we're going to be using or use adverbs to compare. We're going to complete the sentence, right, with the correct form of the adverb. Aaron holds my hand. Do we say more tightly than Veranda does or most tightly than Veranda does? So Aaron holds my hand than Veranda does. So this is basically comparing one action, right? So we can then say Aaron holds my hand more tightly than Veranda does. So more tightly is correct. Of all the pandas, the young one ate the bamboo. So is the young one more hungrily or most hungrily? Remember, comparative adverb comparing two actions is more hungrily. And if we are comparing two or more actions, it is most hungrily. So of all the pandas, the youngest one ate the bamboo. So of all the pandas, are we comparing it to, let's say, basically just one or two actions or to more than two actions? What is this, a comparative or is this a superlative? Because it says, of all the pandas, the young one ate the bamboo more hungrily or most hungrily. All right, let's choose number two then, most hungrily. Well done. And most hungrily is correct, right? Most hungrily. Of all his mistakes, the last mistake weighed, do we say most heavily on Taka's mind or more heavily on Taka's mind? So, of all his mistakes, the last mistake weighed most heavily or more heavily on Taka's mind. All right, so we can then say of all his mistakes, right? The last mistake weighed. So of all the mistakes, The last mistake weighed most heavily or more heavily on Tucker's mind? All right, let's choose the first one, which is most heavily, because they're saying of all his mistakes. And most heavily is correct. So well done. Well done. Good job. Chad raises his hand. Do we say the higher of all students in the class or the highest of all students in the class? So Chad raises his hand, the higher or the highest of all the students in the class. All right, so we can then say the highest, especially when there's the. So the highest of all students in class. So well done. Yes, highest is correct. The pitcher threw the ball. Do we say lowest on the second pitch than on the first pitch, or lower on the second pitch than the first pitch? So the pitcher threw the ball lower, because it's a comparative adverb, on the second pitch than the first pitch. Lower. All right, so well done. Lower is correct. And then when you make dinner, remember that the sausages cook faster than the cabbage or fastest than the cabbage. So when you make dinner, remember that the sausage cooks faster or fastest than the cabbage. Fastest or faster. Yes, so it's faster, which means that so faster. All right. So here it also says complete the sentence with the correct form of the verb, of the adverb. Warren calls us to dinner. Loudest than called us, or louder than called us. So Warren calls us to dinner louder than called us. So louder than called us. Lovely, beautiful. Grandpa greeted Mandy, the of all his grandchildren. So Grandpa greeted Mandy, the so if it says of all his children, remember we said if it says of all his children, Mandy's being compared to all the children, then we can say most warmly. Most warmly. And of all Carter's children, Neil cleans the house the more carefully or the most carefully. The is also there. So, of all Mr. Carter's children, Neil cleans the house, do we say the more carefully or the most carefully? Especially since the is there. Yes, so we can say the most carefully. So well done. Great job. And Neil dances the, do we say the more wildly or the most wildly of all the children? He's being compared to the children. So Neil dances the, do we say more wildly or most wildly of all the children? All right, so we can say the most wildly. So the most wildly. So Neil dances the most wildly of all the children, most wildly. Wow, well done. Good job. All right. So that is basically our test or tutorial, right, on adverbs that compare. And remember, we said an adverb tells us more about the verb, right? It tells us more about the verb, or we can even say describes a verb, right? That is an adverb. And when we compare adverbs, we can compare adverbs in the form of comparative adverbs, right? Which shows one action that is being done. And then we can also compare adverbs in the superlative form, right? The superlative form or superlative adverbs, which shows um, more or two or more actions that are being done, right? So just before we end off, right? Remember we said we're going to go back. So yeah, if we again look at the comparative adverb and the superlative adverb, once again, if it has more than one syllable, right, then we either say more carefully to show basically two actions that has been done, or we say most carefully to basically refer to three or two or more actions that is being done, right? So that is the, it is more than one syllable, we use more or most. More for comparative, most we use for superlative adverb. All right. So grade fives, that is now the end of our lesson on adverbs that compare. And we did the lesson of use adverbs to compare. Thank you very much for joining the class. And I really hope that you're going to have a good day further. Goodbye.